We will get started shortly. We are allowing people to come on in. Okay, it is the top of the hour, so I want to wish everyone a good afternoon. My name is Kelsey Richart, and I serve as the Associate Director for Workforce Innovation at the Manufacturing Institute. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our December Solution Series event, where we bring manufacturers together to discuss challenges and innovative solutions. Before we get started, I want to dive in and share a little bit about the Manufacturing Institute. We are the workforce and education affiliate of the National Association of Manufacturers, and it is our mission to prepare the workforce for today and tomorrow. And we do that by supporting our manufacturers with some key programs. So, first, our Heroes Make America, where we connect transition military members, veterans, and their families to manufacturing careers. Step Ahead, where we empower the workforce at all career levels through recognition, resource, and leadership development. FAME, which is the Federation for Advanced Manufacturing Education, an earn and learn style program that helps to train students to become advanced maintenance technicians, and Workforce Innovation, which is my team, and we offer strategies for things like second chance hiring, workforce policy, student engagement, and helping manufacturers with employer-led community partnerships. So, just a couple of housekeeping reminders. This event is being recorded, and we will share the recording link with all registrants just after the new year. We are using Zoom webinar today, so please feel free to use the question and answer feature at the bottom of your screen to interact with us and our guests as we go throughout the hour. Okay, with that, let's turn to today's topic, which is childcare. Access to childcare is one of the top barriers in our workforce participation. And recently, I was reading, according to the US Chamber of Commerce, 58% of working parents have left a job due to childcare challenges. And in the manufacturing sector, we even see more layers to that challenge. Things like shift work, or maybe a manufacturer is located in a rural area, or working through some non-traditional hours. And so today we're going to explore how manufacturers can address these challenges and support working parents in our industry. And to help us unpack this important topic, I am so happy to introduce my colleague, Jordan Meringue. He is the Director of Workforce Innovation and Policy. He's going to give our audience a wave there. And most importantly, our special guest. And so, as I introduce you, if you wouldn't mind to come off mute and give us just a brief background. But first, Tony Dillon, VP and Corporate Benefits Advisor at Tootris.
Thank you, Kelsey. I am excited to be here with the Manufacturing Institute, and I am with Tootris. I've been with Tootris a year and a half now. My background, though, I was born and raised in Southern Indiana, and I was in banking for 12 years. And all of a sudden, 1997, Toyota dropped a giant manufacturing plant in my backyard, basically, and I had an opportunity to go work for Toyota 25 years later. Um, and through a lot of different assignments, four startups, supplier assignment, ultimately, in 2019, I actually came to Huntsville, Alabama for the startup of Mazda-Toyota Manufacturing. And that was a 4-year assignment. At the end of that assignment, I had an opportunity to either maybe move or retire, and I chose to retire and follow my heart a little bit with what I had kind of gotten involved with at Mazda-Toyota, and that was childcare solutions. So that's what ultimately led me to Tootris.
Thank you so much, Tony. Our other special guest, we have Jessica Luther, External Affairs Specialist at Mazda Toyota Manufacturing. Jessica?
Yeah, so I am external affairs specialist at Mazda-Toyota Manufacturing. Mazda-Toyota is a joint venture between Toyota and Mazda, producing a vehicle for each of the companies. And external affairs specialist means a lot of things. I work heavily in our community here in Huntsville, Alabama. I do media and government relations, as well as our social innovation strategy. So I manage our giving. And I got to partner on the exciting side of workforce development that includes things like childcare. My history, though, I was a journalist before moving into a role in development with nonprofits, and I worked at the YMCA here in Huntsville for 5 years as the director of development. So I learned a lot about childcare through that former position. And now here at MTM, I'm coming up on 4.5 years in this role, and love it. Love what we get to do in the community, and love the many ways we get to serve our team members, which of course is how Tootris kind of came to be a partner with us.
Awesome. I am so excited for our audience to hear both of your perspectives. You bring so many years to this conversation. First, before we really get into the meat and potatoes, I would love to engage our audience. And so what's going to happen, you will see a poll pop up on your screen here. There it is. And our question is, what's the biggest childcare challenge impacting your current workforce? And so if our guest wouldn't mind to give us a little insight. I see the answers rolling in. And it's a mixed bag. We had some bets going on as to what this might look like. Shift coverage, your second and third shift, which is a difficult shift, and limited access because of local supply. Okay, those are top two, and they are tied. Shift coverage being one of the biggest ones there. So with that, I really want to shift into our business case here and to learn some more about our guest. And so Tony, I'm going to kick it to you here. From your perspective, why is childcare a workforce issue? Get us started here.
I think that we all know some of the childcare challenges that currently face us now with the cost of care, finding available care, and things like that. And what that translates to in a work setting is a lot of stress. It translates to ability to be at work on time and at work, as much as possible, and then to kind of be in the right mind frame for doing the work. And so, one of the things that we look at when we're talking about, childcare is what are the kind of things that we can kind of direct ourselves to say, what are the support functions that are going to allow team members to be there. And we do that with all types of benefits. It could be your health care, your EAP, employee assistance program. All those kind of things are necessary. But a lot of times, employers aren't looking at one of the big ones, and that's childcare. And what does that mean? So I can talk a little bit more about that upcoming, but it's huge. And it also makes a huge difference for the return on investment, even for the company.
Yeah. Tony, can you give us a little insight into your 25 years in manufacturing and maybe how has this challenge evolved over those years supporting manufacturers?
Yeah, well, I started in 1998 at Toyota, and one of my first opportunities for a big project, actually in 2000, was standing up an on-site childcare center at the Toyota Indiana plant, and it was a great project. It took a couple of years to get. It's a very expensive project, but we Toyota. I use we a lot when I get back in my manufacturing head space, so bear with me. But standing that up, dealing with alternative shifts and things like that seemed to be a really good solution at the time. And it's proven to be everything, by the way, in this space matters. Whatever solutions that are out there for childcare helps. And that's the thing that we have to look at. So the downside to some of that, being a young HR manager, as an example, was sitting there um, and yells across the cubicle, "Hey, Tony, we have a biter," and I'm like, "Hey, what do we mean we have a biter? What's a biter?" And those things have shark teeth, those 2 year olds. That's no problem. And that's actually fun and funny. But because that kind of things that happen, but then you have parents get upset, then they bring those issues to work, or you have a restraining order, or you have some things that you have to work out when you have, or the fence isn't high enough. You have a licensing issue. There's a lot of challenges with that. But all that being said, it's a good thing. Um, Doing some different startups and helping different kind of divisions along the way, primarily in human resources and all. I got to see the stress of team members, especially spending a lot of years in employee relations, of what their challenges were. And childcare continued to grow as one of those challenges, as of course, as we know, as the environment stands now with cost and availability and things, and COVID really having just a very hard impact on that. And then fast forward to Mazda-Toyota when I came to Huntsville. There's 25 people in a temporary office to start up this 4 million square foot, 4,500 place, and all of it was strategy at the time. How do you get this thing started up online, hiring the people, and a lot of great people doing that. Childcare was a piece of that. We knew early, we being Mazda-Toyota, knew early that a childcare solution may make sense, at least to study deeply. And so through that study and going to community meetings, discussing what the challenges were, one of the frustrations I had was a lot of talk about the problem, but not a lot about the solution. Very hard to problem solve, but you have to at some point get to root cause and countermeasures as we learn in manufacturing. So doing the standard model of what are all the options and how do you measure those. This idea of an alternative childcare solution came about from the Chamber of Commerce, actually. Hey, I don't know much about this, but maybe you want to look into it. That was Tootris, young company out of San Diego, very tech-based, a solution for on-demand childcare. And I was intrigued and almost a non-believer early of, what do you mean? You connect to existing providers and you make all this kind of magic happen. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's what really intrigued me so much so ultimately, looking at what does it mean to offer from a business standpoint of return on investment too, because we are a business that need to focus on our core mission. How do we do that and not get bogged down with a childcare solution, but let that thing run and be and do a good job without too much involvement? And of course, there's always the cost issue. Ultimately, that was Tootris for us, and that was the deciding factor. And honestly, what got across the finish line, what got it approved at Mazda-Toyota was saying, a reduction in turnover. A new startup in COVID, lots of turnover the first 30, 60, 90 days. How do we reduce that turnover? If we could save 1% of the turnover happening, it would pay for the entire thing. And I'll let Jessica talk about, because then I retire. I didn't get to see all the fruits of the labor, but I did get to see it because I ultimately fell in love with the mission and the model of what Tootris is doing so much so I ultimately joined their team, and that's what brought me here. And you can see some of the metrics, that are on the screen. I'll let Jessica talk to some of those.
Yeah, Jessica, when you hear Tony say 1% can make such a big difference. And then when your boots on the ground at Mazda Toyota, or MTM is what we're going to refer it to, tell us a little bit about that from your perspective.
Well, first of all, like Tony said, he was very much involved in vetting Tootris, and he was also a great human resources manager. He did hire me, and he didn't pay me to say that, but he really had sort of a vision. And what we realized, I think, like what Tony said, is exactly correct. 1% decrease in attrition would basically pay for the cost of Tootris. Because Tootris is scalable and you have options within the system that they present an employer with, we knew we could fit it to our needs. We launched in May 2022, and Tootris was right here in our plant, working with our team members to get them established in their network. And we saw over the course of that next year, from May to May 2022 to 2023, a reduction in overall attrition of 11%. Now, we were doing a lot. There was a lot of culture, a lot of pay and benefits work that we were doing. So we can't say that Tootris was solely responsible for that 11%. However, what always jumped out to me is we have about 33 to 35% female team members, which is a benchmark in manufacturing, especially automotive. And we really thought about what those different facets of our workforce, what they needed, right? The younger team members who don't have experience, the parents. And when we saw that, if you isolated our female team member attrition, it was 20%. It had dropped 20%. I think you can't deny that a childcare solution had to have had an impact in that drop in attrition, right? So we also heard really favorable feedback from our team about how Tootris worked for them. They say that it is concierge service. So when we signed up, we decided there were options. We could pay for Tootris to basically be a hands-on network, helping find childcare where our team members wanted it and the kind of childcare they wanted. And then you could also opt in to provide a stipend. And we knew that helping pay for childcare was one of the big goals that we had as a company. We set a budget, and as Tony has said, on-site childcare is an awesome solution. But we were able to pay for our team members up to 30% of their childcare costs for a fraction of what it would cost to build on-site childcare, right? And so that was another, aspect of why Tootris was such a great solution for us. And I think that our team has really responded to that help. Sort of a no muss, no fuss. We send our 30% through Tootris directly to their provider that they choose. They're only responsible for the part that they need to pay. Tootris' concierge service truly is that. They help our team members find providers. And if they don't have a provider in their area, or, the kind of provider they need, they go out and they work with our childcare ecosystem to help create opportunities. Some of our team members have told us they've gone out with Tootris and helped their provider become an overnight childcare provider. Now 24-hour shift work, right? So you can split those between team members on 2 different shifts and provide that coverage and rotate when your shift rotates. So I think that was really intriguing and important to us. As you can see from these numbers, that when you offer this kind of solution, and you have a young workforce, a workforce that has dependents, that is growing their families, they use it and they find a lot of value in it. And as long as we don't have to micromanage their relationship with Tootris, which we don't, it continues to be the right solution for us right now. We're not against building on site if the need grows to that extent that we think it's a great step. But I think the partnership with Tootris will always be there.
I can hear the passion in your voice, and I love it, supporting your workforce. If you don't mind, really quick, can we step back and look through the lens of the partnership that Mazda-Toyota has with Tootris. How did that start? There may be manufacturers on the call that are thinking, you know what, we really do need to invest in some childcare solutions. How did Mazda-Toyota find Tootris, and what did that look like?
So what
Yeah,
Tony referenced before, sorry, was the chamber really brought it to the forefront, and then we discussed it internally. And I'll let Tony talk about kind of what Tootris sort of how they are, how they differentiate themselves in the market. But I'll first say for us, the scalability to be able to decide if we wanted to provide a subsidy, to be able to decide the amount and scope of the investment, how many different spots would we offer it to any team member? Would we start off with a limited number of spots? We were able to make those decisions right off the bat to fit kind of where we were as a company. So that definitely played into the decision making. And Tony, I know you have a lot of companies who have a lot of different sort of aspects that they look at.
yeah, I think it's important to go back to the why a little bit as well, because why do you go down the path of even investigating childcare as a corporate benefits? Again, misaligning to maybe your mission as a company, but does it? When I think about just putting in manufacturing terms, the level of energy, cost, labor that is spent on things like um, equipment, for instance, a robot or a conveyor system or a paint booth or whatever that is. One of the things that has to go with that is a maintenance that says we're going to not only do preventative maintenance, we're going to do predictive maintenance. We're going to forecast what the problem with this equipment is going to be, and we're going to get to it before it becomes a problem, before it gets stressed, before it breaks down, before it quits on us. And the same kind of thing is related to our more important asset as employers, our people. And sometimes, we put some framework around that, but have we really hit all the areas that we should in order for someone to feel safe, secure, fulfilled, enabled, engaged, and all those kind of things? In the history of surveys for employees, just morale surveys, two things that you look at is engagement and enablement. And enablement is, do I have the tools to do my job? Engagement is, do I feel good about doing my job? And we want those kind of things. Tootris or a childcare solution is part of that enablement to lead to the engagement to where I'm comfortable and I'm doing my best work. That machine, that equipment, that robot isn't crashing. And I've seen some real freakouts when equipment goes down and it stops the line, and emergency meetings. And that's the kind of, I think, mindset that we need to have in manufacturing and honestly across a lot of industries about our more important resource, human capital. So and just the people. So back to Tootris though, and that whole finding them, it was such a unique thing, as Jessica said, about the chamber bringing it forward, and it really kind of gets to market quickly. And it kind of covers that thing. And I loved, and I talk about my heart in this space a lot. And I love the fact that Tootris is not just providing an employer-based solution that sometimes they don't know attendance and retention and attraction and employer of choice type of thing, but we're also helping uplift the provider world, the centers, the in-home providers, the nanny services, the summer care, all those kind of things that we touch at Tootris can help lift that up. And it even goes further into getting into things like participating and be a kind of a technical solution for tri-share models and things like that. So even going beyond. So I know that's too much information, but it's very directly related to some of the challenges that happens within an institution now, an employer base, but we don't think about it on the people side the same, and I think we need to.
I love that you mentioned providers. It's a huge ingredient in this recipe of success, right? And making sure that you have a culture of engagement and supportive for your workforce. I want to talk about small and medium-sized manufacturers. We may have some small manufacturers on the call with us today that are thinking, Mazda Toyota is a huge brand with such a large workforce, right? What are some tips and tricks that you might share to a smaller manufacturer when looking into a childcare solution?
So I will say that the name Mazda Toyota Manufacturing carries a global sort of feeling, but we are the only Mazda Toyota Manufacturing in the world. We're a joint venture, which means we are kind of our own, as Tony sort of alluded to, startup company. So yes, we're big. We're 4,500 team members. However, we are not in the pipeline for that Toyota and that Mazda, capital all the time, right? So we are always thinking like a small or medium-sized company. We are always trying to be good stewards of the parent company investment, and also of our community, right? So I think that we relate very much to that kind of viewpoint. And one of the things that we looked for and looked at was that on-site childcare is not possible for everyone, right? It's just not. It's a 20 to 30 million dollar investment, and that's just at the very beginning. So what is a better solution that is maybe could be coupled with on-site care or stands alone? We really looked at, do we have a partnership with a specific local provider? And do we buy or purchase spots, right, for our team members? Just do we look at a larger company to come in and help us? We really investigated that. And what we found was that our team members had opinions. Tony can even speak to this as well. They maybe wanted their childcare to be where they lived and not where they worked. I think a lot of small to medium-sized manufacturers are going to experience that as well. That, you want to connect them with a great provider. You don't necessarily need to be that provider for them, right? And then also the issue of every employee has a different need. Maybe you have a 12-year-old who you need to have in an after-school program for just another year. Maybe you have a brand new baby and you want the very best daycare that you can afford. We wanted not just to have 0 to 5 childcare as an option. And even the most expensive on-site childcare, top of the line on-site childcare is only really providing that 0 to 5 years old option. So we wanted to look at the full scope. And I think that you want the most for your investment, especially if you're a small to medium sized company. You want to be able to scale that investment to fit your budget, and you want to get the most out of it. And that's ultimately why we chose Tootris. We could decide how much our investment was. We could decide how much of a subsidy to provide if we wanted to provide one at all. And we could let Tootris manage the parts that we are not the experts in, right? And that includes finding the right providers, which Tony alluded to before.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Tony, do you want to speak a little bit to the support that you can give to any size manufacturer and give us a little bit more about Tootris?
Yeah, there's a couple things with that. And Tootris works with employers that are 50 employees on up. So we have large and we have medium and we have small that we work with. And there's also outside of just Tootris, and its platform, there's a lot of assistance coming. 45F, for instance, the new legislation in 2026 for tax credits has been enhanced substantially. That's going to, allow for I think it's $500,000 up to $500,000 a year of tax credits for businesses and helping cover some of their expenses, up to 600 for small businesses, 600,000 that is. So there's some really strong relief channels out there that are coming. They're not utilized enough historically when there's some state matching funds or federal. So they need to be made easier. And those are the kind of things that we typically try to have a voice in as well. Jessica brought up a good point. It's not just 0 to 5, it's 0 to 12 at minimum where there's support needed. And I can remember all of a sudden in 2010 becoming a single father. And I thought I knew, I thought I had the empathy for the mothers of the challenge. And I didn't have empathy. I may have had some basic understanding until I was literally sprinting out of the plant through the turnstiles, just heart palpitations and worried about getting a child from point A to point B, from school to practice, whatever that was. And I remember experiencing that. So whether it's an after school care, whether it's maybe a summer camp, because summer, what do I do? All those type of things matter, and that's kind of the network. And also in terms of the support for the providers, what if providers out there are in home and they have 10 spaces available, but they kind of average 2 slots not filled? That 2 slots could be enough between their doors being open and not being open. That's the skinny margins of the world we're talking about. But if I can advertise that, if I can be part of that Tootris network at no cost to the provider, but I can put out there, hey, these are my hours. This is the extended hours. This is the maybe allergies that we're sensitive to. Maybe it's faith-based or whatever. I can publicize that, and Tutor's prioritizing by slots available. Oh, I have 2 slots available. Oh, I have 4 slots available. Now, when I use that technology as a parent and go out there, I can see this, put in my zip code to where it pops up closer to home than it does to work if that's my need, and I can start interacting right there. So that's the beauty of kind of how that, and you can see here on the slide all the different types of care that's available. And by the way, in those discussions with our concierge team, with all these providers, as we load this network up of now over 230,000 providers that we have nationwide, there's discussions happening that translate sometimes to, I was at 10, but with your technology, with my improvements or efficiencies, I'm going to go to 12. And every slot counts in this world. So whether it's expanding hours, expanding seats, those are the type of things that start to nibble away at this problem that we have. How do I run more efficiently, and how do I stay in business? Which is something that, they're always trying to fight and stay ahead of. So that's a little bit about it. You can see, and by the way, this is for a different discussion on a different occasion, but next year we're coming out with pet care and elderly care too. So we're trying to cover all those care needs that lead to stress for the employees. One of the things in childcare deserts, we know they exist. And we have customers that are in those deserts. We try to find all available resources and put it in our network in those deserts. We also accommodate things like familial care, where grandma is watching the child on second shift, and we can make grandma a provider. And grandma, therefore, if the company gives a stipend like the $250 that Mazda-Toyota provides, grandma can get that stipend. And what does that mean? Maybe it's not huge, but it's diapers, it's travel, it's food, it's something. And we find that that can be a really popular option as well. And by the way, on our providers, though, our in-home daycare centers, we vet all of them. We make sure that they're licensed. We make sure that the background checks are the boxes are checked and things like that, to where we are comfortable that the quality of care is being delivered.
Thanks
Do I
for going into that,
talk
Tony.
with my hands too much?
It's all good. Keeps it engaging. Appreciate you going into that. That speaks to a question that someone put into the Q&A box. So I think understanding that childcare slots is one of the biggest barriers right now of if there are no slots available to me, then all the attempts to connect you to those slots might be a challenge. So certainly appreciate you addressing that. And to that, as you all in the audience have questions for Mazda-Toyota Manufacturing and Tootris, please feel free to put them in the question and answer box. We'll have a moment, we'll have an opportunity just in a moment for you all we're going to pull up Post-it notes and for you all to input some of the attempts that you've made to address childcare challenges, what some of those barriers are. So start thinking about that. And in the meantime, as you put Q&A or questions into the Q&A box, Jessica, wondering if you can, we highlighted a couple of that list of the metrics that you all saw in that year one and then up until 2025, what are the metrics that you all considered going into this analysis of what might be a childcare solution for you? That's a lot of good stuff that you pulled up, but what are some of the ROI numbers that when you go to your higher ups and suggest we're going to address childcare, I'm sure that's a larger conversation that you need to have some metrics ready to talk about. So if you could share some of that, and as well, Tony, for you, what do you hear from manufacturers or other employers about that ROI?
I feel like Tony would be the perfect person to answer this for Mazda-Toyota. Tony did a lot of that due diligence when he was here. And it says a lot that he transitioned after retirement to work with Tootris, because it was truly the fulfillment of a kind of almost too good to be true situation when we first encountered them. I think the things that we looked at when we were going into this were, of course, the attrition rates we were experiencing. Those have leveled out now because we're no longer a brand new company. We're no longer, immediately post-pandemic. We have now invested in workforce training so that our new employees know what to expect, I think, from a vehicle manufacturing plant. But we still have a relatively young workforce, median age of 29 years old. That's very young for manufacturing. Yep. And as I mentioned before, 33 to 35% women, which is an astounding benchmark, truly. And we have managed to keep that benchmark, right? As we have grown as a company, we haven't, that if anything has gotten higher as we have stabilized. So, some of the metrics we were looking at were going to be usage. Would those demographics lead into usage? And as we track all of that, what we see is absolutely, when you look at, the employees with eligible dependents, over 60% or around 60% of them are, registered with Tootris and at some point have taken part in, that program. I think we would find that at certain times and certain months, the need for our team would outnumber the slots that we could have provided through on-site childcare. Right. But also just the longevity of the usage of the program when your kid is no longer, 2-3 years old, but you still need those summer camp and after school programs. Yep. And seeing that there's that continuous usage of Tootris in one way or another. Those are the ROIs that we're really looking at, and just making sure that the investment is being utilized, and it certainly is by our team.
Tony, please join on to that. And the second question in that line was usage. How do you communicate this opportunity to prospective employees? You are someone who has had childcare challenges, thus was challenged getting into the workforce. We as a company now offer you something that might allow you more easily to walk into the workforce. So if you could address those two, Tony, and then we got some question and answer rolling in. So sure. We'll go into that in just a moment.
Yeah, I'll hit the ROI thing a little bit, because what Jessica said when I was there, I didn't do enough compared to what, this is the continuous improvement mindset. What do you really need to dig down to and find how to kind of put dollars around some of these problems that businesses are having? For instance, we put a number. Let's just say it's somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 replacement cost when someone leaves. Somebody fills in for overtime. You got to retrain. You may have safety, quality, productivity issues when somebody not trained in that position. All those kind of things add up to a lot of dollars. When you start to put that in your business together, and then start to measure your. And I remember, by the way, when the turnover rates or annual turnover rates were 6 to 8% a year. And then it wasn't long after COVID, it's like, if we put these strategies together, we can get down to 30% annualized turnover. So turnover is a real challenge. And so every little bitty thing counts. So if you can start to reduce that, and you're talking $20,000 to $50,000 for every person, those numbers add up. You can start to put this into a mortgage calculator equivalent. But then there's the attendance. 11 absences a year for childcare related absences. That's a big number. When medical is somewhere like 5 to 8, and now
Mhm.
you're talking about 11 for childcare.
Yeah.
Well, I can't fix all those with childcare, but good childcare solutions maybe cuts it back by 4 per employee at a $850 per absence cost. Now I can really start to do some math on that. And all of a sudden, I can get to 100% return on investment very quickly. Sometimes 400%, when most businesses have the mindset of it's a cost only issue. And so the point is, you really get to the point where it's more expensive to not have childcare solutions than it is to have childcare solutions. And one of the things about Mazda-Toyota, when you look at their numbers, is if I translate their numbers of those using the stipend and the number of people using that on a regular basis, and I translate that to an on-site capacity, it more than doubles that on-site for about 1/10 of the cost, maybe 1/15 of the cost. So that's the Tootris thing that I love,
Sure.
because we're using those providers. And then I forgot the second question, Jordan. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It was about using it almost as a recruitment tool of, we know that
Oh, yeah.
childcare stands in the way of folks entering the workforce, whether it's part-time to full-time or, unable to enter the workforce at all into part-time.
Yep.
So wondering how the conversation with that, do you partner with local community providers who are working with those single moms, single dads who can't work? Wondering what that looks like on outreach.
It just and this is a kick the ball back to Jessica. So Jessica, I'd like for you to comment on this, but this is where she's way too humble, because when Jessica kind of entered the picture of this journey, she kind of did the whole hold my beer thing. I got this. I'm going to take this kind of thing and do something with it for Mazda Toyota that may have the biggest impression, even financially, of the data that I gave you, that a lot of companies don't take advantage of enough. And that is exploiting it to, hey, we are an employer of choice. We do care about our team members. We do have these solutions. Please consider us for this reason, for the attraction side as well. So those kind of things are just huge. And Jessica, and we have some customers that do great with this. Jessica's really taken this though and used it as a means to show what the great benefits are, segmenting this as one of them. So
Yeah.
that's Jessica. Talk to that though, because you've got some great
Right.
partners that help you with that and everything.
Well, we just didn't sit on this. We really,
Hmm.
we saw that Tootris was going to be an active partner. So we thought, we want to use this as a recruitment tool too. I wrote press releases about it. We have gone on different media platforms talking about it. In fact, pretty soon after we launched it, we even spoke with the Wall Street Journal and NPR. They interviewed one of our team members who was moving from Louisiana, Decoya, to come take a job at MTM. And she was a single mom. And she was basically saying, I'm going to leave my daughter in Louisiana with my mom because I don't think I can figure out childcare in a new city, in a new state. And when she was going through the orientation at MTM, she heard about Tootris and she started to think, up to $3,000 a year in support for MTM. Maybe I can make this work, right? I don't know that we would have kept her if she could not have had her daughter with her, right?
Yeah.
We don't know the long term. It was amazing that she was so dedicated to reinventing her life that she was willing to do that in the first place. But what happened is she was able to bring her daughter up here, utilize Tootris, bring other team members to the provider that she was using because they were so great. And eventually now her mom lives in Alabama with her. And, she kind of moved her family here and she was able to accept a promotion to a team member relations role. And her daughter has had the same childcare provider, and we have been continuing to support and provide that subsidy for them for, years now. So I think when you have stories like that and you take the action to publicize and talk about them in a really organic and genuine way, I do think that it was a huge benefit to us to attracting the right kind of team member, the right person who was really wanting to re-enter or maybe change jobs, and they found us, I think, because we were able to publicize Tootris and really talk about it in our community.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story, and I'm sure you can share a lot more. We're gonna offer up an opportunity for you all in the audience to we'll pull up a post-it note application here in Zoom, and want to essentially hear from you all. And what are the childcare solutions that you've considered implementing? Have they been successful? And recognizing that Jessica and Tony, I'm sure, have gone through a variety of iterations of this prior to landing on Tootris with such a valuable solution. What are some of the barriers you all have encountered during your search for a childcare solution? So we'll give you all a handful of minutes to drop in a few of these sticky notes, and we'll use them and reflect on them as we go through the rest of this conversation. Also, really appreciate the question and answer coming in. We have a handful that we'll work through right after we drop some thoughts into here. Thank you all.
If you move your mouse over on top of the post-it notes, you can move one to the screen here. So while you're thinking about sharing maybe some challenges here, I want to go to a really interesting question in the chat. And this is for both Tony and Jessica, if you don't mind. How are employers balancing childcare benefits to employees with the need for employees who don't have that need? Let me ask it one more time. How are employers balancing childcare benefits to employees with that need for employees who do not have that need? A benefit to one might not be a benefit to all.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that real quick because it periodically comes up, but surprisingly very rarely, because most folks that aren't qualified, they don't have children or they're grown or whatever, are still appreciative of benefits for those that are going to be at work on time, be there more often, and they can understand that. And the other thing is there are benefits that are utilized by team members, employees that are not utilized, because somebody needs a shoulder surgery. I don't go out and break my arm so I can have equivalent benefits. So now I know that's a bad analogy, but Jessica, that I have terrible analogies. But anyway, EAP is a good example of utilization. I know it's available to anybody, and so is childcare. There's going to be some prerequisites to what that is on all the benefits.
Yeah,
but I've never seen it be an issue.
And I think that attendance and the shared responsibility of work, especially on a manufacturing line, anything that raises the tide for our team, it lifts all boats, right? So our team members are happy that their colleagues who are parents and in the thick of parenting are able to make it to work, do their job, that the impetus is not left on the, childless to pull everyone's weight. I think there is certainly like a utilitarian aspect to childcare, but also just very, superficially speaking, the way that we deliver that subsidy, it never hits the bank account or check of a team member. It's delivered directly from MTM through Tootris to the childcare provider. And I think that really takes away any maybe like feelings, however unfounded, that there's impropriety or people taking advantage of a system or a benefit. They know that's not happening. It's there if you need it. If you don't need it, then you don't have to worry about it. So I do think that the way that we are managing it right now really does neutralize all of those feelings, as Tony said.
That was so much better than I said.
It's a wonderful team effort.
That's right. Yeah, and to that, we haven't talked about a little bit more specifically about how Tootris works, and I'm happy to get into that just a little bit more detail, because it's still, even with some explanation, because I had that explanation, I remember, and I'm a slow learner, but I was like, I still don't understand how these puzzle pieces go. I know we have a couple slides that we could throw up if we need to on that.
Sure. If you don't mind, Tony, I have a really interesting question that I want to make sure I get to really quick.
Sure.
The question is, I work on public policy, and I'm wondering if there are particular local, state, or federal policies, excluding anything related to government spending, that can expand childcare options. Anything that you know of?
State by state, there's a lot of energy and initiatives happening. And we actually at Tootris are a part of a lot of those discussions. We have some ability to be the engine behind making some of that connectivity work. It's another side of our business that we're really proud of, and it's continually growing and expanding. But yes, tax credits seem to be, or employer-based matches. Kentucky's a state that does that. Alabama has tax credits, and then there's the federal tax credit subsidies under 45F. Senators Katie Britt and Tim Kaine, two different, political sides coming together, working on childcare being big issues. Katie Britt being right here in Alabama are very fruitful in terms of those discussions and those expansions. So again, I would stay macro level to say state by state, yes, the energy's there, the discussions are there. We're at the table of a lot of that, and happy to be so there. I really think TriShare has a very strong opportunity to be successful, and that's very state by state as well.
Mhm.
So it gets very complex, but it does tie that whole mindset of a third government, a third employer, now a third employee that really starts to lower the cost.
Tony, can I ask, the MI, we talk about, sector partnerships working together as a manufacturing sector to address the challenges for workforce. So wondering if you've had conversations with groups of manufacturers or groups of companies in a specific industry, of whether it's Tootris or another childcare solution, of how, Jessica said the rising tide lifts all boats, us as a manufacturing sector helping each other out by creating the requisite need, thus, spurring on more childcare slots coming open, or locations coming open. So wondering if there's any of that kind of sector-based work that drives some of these solutions.
I think no more so than on the manufacturing side, and other industries are also doing it. But in manufacturing, there's a lot of collaboration, complete openness, non-competitive world of discussing this, expanding this, and supporting this, whether it be on what you guys are doing today, which is a great example. And there will be positive outcomes as a result of this, of just putting light bulbs out there in really smart people's heads to say, let's do something with this, whatever that may be. Panels that are happening, at whether it's in human resource management society conferences, or women in manufacturing. We've been there on panels, and they showcase a lot about childcare. All those type of things make a difference because they get the dialogue in front of folks, and they start to prioritize it. And what happens so often when these things stay in HR, and I came from HR, I totally get it. They're understaffed, they're underfunded, and they have way too much to do. Childcare as a benefit is another thing that I like the thought of, but getting to it, I have about three things that are priorities A, B, and C in front of it. And that ends up being delays. And I want to send that message that as employers, especially manufacturers, we're excellent at problem solving. And we need to be part of the solution. We have an obligation, and I say we as part of that manufacturing environment, an obligation to be a problem solver, a participant, and be part of the solution and helping this. Because what happens? More centers close, more in-home care close, and
Yeah.
the workforce shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and we're missing talent.
Absolutely. Tony, I believe that I have the slide up that
Yeah.
describes how Tootris works, if you want to speak to that really quickly.
Yeah, just really quickly, I think NPR said it best, that where, if you kind of think about it being the Airbnb of childcare, where you can very easily go out to your app, overlaid on a map, and you can see that in the left hand picture of the phone that says, hey, here's a center. I put in basically my street address or my zip code or whatever, and these are the centers around. They come up on the map as pins, 20 at a time, because there may be 100, there may be 300. And then I can go and I can look at each of those. And again, they're prioritized by slots available or by like 125 criteria that I may want to put in to say, prioritize based upon my needs. From there, I can actually communicate directly with those providers, start the conversation. Of course, then I can see, by the way, their licensing information on it. And then I can start that dialogue and start to vet myself, those providers, and translate to care. The 24-hour-by-7 concierge support is invaluable in terms of I'm still struggling a little bit. I just need to make that call. Call the support line. They're more than happy. Hey, I already have a child care provider, but I'd like them to be in the network so I can receive the stipend. Gotcha. We will reach out to that provider, talk to them. We're very successful in getting new providers to support our network because it's not any cost to them. And so therefore, and then by the way, the third one is just a kind of a picture that says, as an employer, I have this administrative function to say, how are we doing? What does it look like? And those kind of things. That's the integration that makes all this system connect together.
I think we have one more question that we can address. Just a quick one before we close out here. Don asked, if we're in the childcare field, childcare provider, who do we contact at manufacturing sites? Who's the best person? Who's the agency or group within the manufacturing plant to go and talk? Hey, I'm a childcare provider. I can help you out. Jessica, Tony, you have any thoughts on someone walking into the facility and saying, I got something, but I don't know where to start?
Not the CFO. No, I love CFOs for those on the call. They're just the ones asking the good questions, especially the ROI. That's for you, CFO. But HR is the place to start. Your employee relations person, your business partner that maybe hopefully is on the floor and talking to the team members. You can start there, bringing the questions back, creating the forum to do that, and I think that it's really an HR benefit type of starting point. Jessica, did we lose Jessica?
We might have.
Okay.
That's okay. If she can hear us, I do want to get to one last question to bring us home here before we close out. The hour has gone by too fast. If you don't mind, how do you envision childcare and these sort of support systems really playing into the workforce strategy and manufacturing moving forward? What is in your crystal ball?
Jessica's back. Jessica, did you hear that? Do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sorry. We made it as far as we could in Mazda-Toyota without getting kicked off the Zoom. But no, if you want to repeat, what was the question?
Sure. We're closing out the hour here. If you could look in your crystal ball and, talked about some of the strategies today and the success that you've had. But as we look forward to workforce strategy and supporting your team members, what does that look like in the years to come?
So I believe heavily in a public-private partnership for childcare. The model that childcare providers use is, if you investigate it a little bit, it isn't always sustainable. It is not always profitable, right? And I do believe that we as a company are willing to invest in our team members, and I hope more industry partners do that. But I do think there is some policy that needs to come into play. I also think that, we recently invested in the Women's Foundation of Alabama's Child Care Accelerator. Tony, I think you were a part of that too, where they are sort of using it as like a launch tank, but for child care providers in an area in Limestone County where there were very few providers. I think those ideas and outside of the box thinking is really going to be important moving forward. I don't see our team members' need for childcare to be diminishing, and I also Tony brought this up earlier just briefly, but I also think that elder care is going to become a workforce issue that we're not going to be able to ignore. And if we have a child care solution, an elder care solution can certainly piggyback upon those learnings and that kind of innovation. So we will keep investing in workforce development, and not just training programs, but programs that address childcare, transportation, the infrastructure that supports our team members. And we hope that other industry partners recognize that those are not personal issues. They are workforce issues that affect everyone. And then we also hope that our local, state, and federal governments understand that we are willing to be a partner and we want that solution. And so do most of the providers that we know and work with.
That was the perfect way to close
Ditto.
this
Glad I hopped
out.
back on just in time to say it.
I appreciate you both so much. And on behalf of the Manufacturing Institute, thank you for joining us today and sharing your childcare solutions. They have been a wealth of information. And so to our audience, thank you also for joining. We will be sure to send this recording and some key takeaways, including some of the information that Tony and Jessica shared on how you might be able to do this. And then if you don't mind, please mark your calendar for the first Solution Series event of 2026. We will be highlighting some retention strategies, specifically with onboarding new hires and looking at job analysis to make this better for your workforce. So if you scan that QR code there on your screen, it will take you right to the registration page, and we hope to see you there. I appreciate everyone today, and happy holidays. Thank you so much.